Okay, here we go with part 4. I'm getting cut off here. This will be the final one because I'm just. How many people are actually going to watch all 4 of these? That's like 40 minutes of video. Anyways, getting back to where I hopefully left off here, Dave, I talked about Randy Orton and his ego, obviously. Dave Bautista, who was working in OVW as Leviathan, and again, you can go back and look at some old videos and some old DVDs. I don't know if they're still available or not, but do your history on Dave Bautista. You'll see he was called Leviathan. And this was a creation from Jim Cornette. He had bald head, kind of like what I had here, and he would wear these contacts that were like a green, glowy-looking contacts to make him look real evil. One of the things they had him doing was actually coming out of the Ohio River, and it was Jim Cornette who created the character. Obviously, his wife / girlfriend, whatever she is, Sin, was a manager. She was a gothic type chick, and she would just be real evil. And she had let's see here what they were called at the time there. I can't remember what they were called, but he was the Demon of the Deep, part of their group, and they were just all evil. Her whole group was real gothic. And he came out of the Ohio River. They actually showed him, and I remember him talking about this because he had the no shirt on. It was just him and his wrestling shorts on, and he was barefoot, and he came out of the Ohio River, which if you do your history, if you do your research, the Ohio River is about as nasty as Lake Erie, and that's pretty bad, polluted, and So they talked this poor guy out of coming out of the Ohio River, and the whole thing was Sin. I won't say resurrected, but she contacted him, like you would with a Ouija board or whatever the case is. So she contacted this evil demon, and out came Leviathan, Dave Bautista from the Ohio River. And it was, man, it was just, it was cool to work with him. He was a good guy because the reason was you can sense he was going to be somebody, obviously, at the time. And he was just such a big guy. And big guys like that usually have an ego, or they have this complex where they're better than you, unless you're out there working in the gym with them or actually working with them in the ring. They don't want anything to do with you. But he was very cool to me. Brock Lesnar, another one that at the time had no ego whatsoever. Once he hit the WWE, made all the money, big ego all of a sudden, and you could tell that. I was watching wrestling when he was in the WWE at the time, and you could see it. And I would read about the internet and all his demands and how he just quit wrestling, tried the NFL, and just couldn't make it. Now he's doing mixed martial arts. No matter what, I thought he was a great guy. Brock Lesnar was a very humble farm boy. He was a farm boy, basically, is what he is. Big guy, big farm boy. Couldn't cut a promo to save his life, but he was a great technical wrestler. Obviously, he was a collegiate champion. And I remember him bringing he had a little dog, and I'd have to watch it in the back. I don't have to, but I'd watch it in the back for him while he went to the ring, and he was just a very good guy. John Cena, another great guy. I don't think he has an ego now. I hope he doesn't, because he was just a great guy to work with. He was called the Prototype while he was in OVW, and John Cena had dyed his hair blonde. He had just come in from California, and he was working out with a promotion there. And I knew he would be somebody also, because he had the build, he had the look, and he was one of the rare ones that could not only wrestle, but he could cut a promo on the microphone. And of course, he was the bad guy. He was the heel there, and I can't recall him ever being a good guy when he was in OVW there. But he was great, and as you see him on TV, he's just grown into even a bigger name now. I mean, he's a WWE champion. He's doing Subway commercials. He made a movie called The Marine. John Cena is a class act, and someday I hope I get to meet him again here and remind him of my Macho Man times. We got to work at the Louisville Gardens together, and we got to work several matches together, and he was just such a great guy to work with. Victoria was another good person to work with, very sweet girl. She came, I really can't even remember where she came from, but she owns a pizzeria here now in Louisville, and I think it's called Fat Tony's. I can't remember what it's called, but she's pretty much laid ground here in Louisville, Kentucky, because this is where she got her big break at, obviously, and she has a lot of fans here. Let's see what else I could talk about. Chris Jericho, got to meet him once while at the Louisville Gardens. Stone Cold Steve Austin, as I mentioned, I got to meet him. I got to meet Deborah, more than him, I really get a chance to talk to Stone Cold, but Deborah, his former wife, was a very sweet, very timid woman. And, of course, later on you would find out why, because Stone Cold used to beat her up. But at the time, nobody knew that, obviously. Chris Benoit, good guy. Kurt Angle, before he got on to be a big guy. This was, I believe, Kurt's first or second year in Ohio Valley Wrestling. And then his brother, Eric Angle, would follow, and Eric just didn't have the stuff. He was just too, kind of like what David Flair was, basically everybody wanted David Flair to be the next Ric Flair. It wasn't going to happen. Well, everybody wanted Eric Angle to be the next Kurt Angle, and it never happened. That's why Eric Angle never really made it anywhere in pro wrestling. But Kurt was there. I think it was like his second year in the WWE, and he came to Ohio Valley Wrestling to work with, I believe he was working with Nick Dinsmore at the time, again, because they were both technical wrestlers, and he did do a bit with Brock Lesnar. And the interesting thing is, both of those guys were legit collegiate champions in their separate colleges for wrestling. So it was great to work with Kurt Angle. This is before he shaved his head, before he became a WWE champion, before he left and went to TNA, and before he got an ego. The coolest thing I saw with Brock Lesnar, and I don't know if it's available now or not, I have it on video, so if anybody wants to see it, is Brock Lesnar did a what Mark Merrow, Wildman Mark Merrow, used to do, and I can't remember what it was called. Somebody help me out with this, but basically he did a backflip completely in the air and landed on his opponent, and he did this with his match with Kurt Angle at one of the pay-per-views in the WWE, and of course messed up the spot. He did it one other time prior to that against Sylvester Terkay, who is also, well, actually, I think he just got let go from the WWE, but he was in the OVW as well. And the Shooting Star Press is what it was called. And to see a big guy like Brock Lesnar do that off the top rope is just phenomenal. If you've never seen it, you want to see a big guy do an impressive move, try to find a video of Brock Lesnar doing a Shooting Star Press off the top turnbuckle onto his opponent. It's just an incredible move to see. In my time of wrestling, I got to meet a lot of guys who have passed away. And like I said, when I was in Cincinnati, Brian Pillman, we were trying to get a show together to do something for his old high school at Norwood High School. And at the time, Eric Bischoff just wouldn't let it happen. And it sucked because I never really, I got to meet with, and I got to have lunch with, and I got to have phone calls with, but I never got to work with Flying Brian Pillman. And I missed that. And that sucks. I wish I would have had that opportunity. When I was in OVW, the Big Boss Man was one that I got to work with, and he was a good guy. He was a really good guy, and it was sad that he ended up passing away as well. Bobby Eaton from the Midnight Express, Jim Cornette's old tag team, got to work with him, and he was fun to work with. Tracy Smothers I ended up getting to work with. Jerry the King Lawler, as I mentioned, I had worked with prior to, and of course, when he was there in OVW, he'd come down for a couple of the shows as well. It was just a good time. My final days in OVW came when I had some people on the internet wanting to book some shows, and it was giving these guys some extra exposure because they were mainly just working OVW shows, and that was maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week, and other than that, they didn't do anything. And these guys wanted to get out there and do more besides just your OVW house shows. So I was putting together some stuff with people in Kentucky, in Hazard, I believe it was in Hazard, Kentucky, and they were telling me what wrestlers they wanted, and I went through Danny Davis and Jim Cornette, and all the wrestlers wanted to get involved. They didn't want Kenny Bolin, though. They just didn't like Kenny Bolin, plain and simple. And if you know who Kenny Bolin is, you probably don't like him either. Kenny took offense to that, went to Jim Cornette, and Jim Cornette is not a big fan of the internet. You know, if it has something to do with the internet, he's not a fan of it. Even though he knows that that's the future of the media, basically, he wants nothing to do with it. Well, whatever Kenny Bolin said to Jim Cornette was, basically it came down to where I was booking all these guys. It was an internet show, and it was just a bunch of marks, and basically these guys, probably wouldn't even get paid. It was way out in BFE, Kentucky, and made up whatever stories he made up. The next thing I know, none of those guys could do any wrestle this show that I was trying to put together, and I ended up losing TV time. All of a sudden, I went from getting on TV every single week to not at all. And basically, I would show up in full Macho Man gear, ready to do whatever shows I can, and